Stop fidgeting, Lucas whispered, nudging Elian's ribs with his elbow. He took a sip of his champagne, his eyes scanning the ballroom with the hunger of a shark in shallow water. You look fine, Elian. Better than fine. You look like you belong here. Elian didn't feel like he belonged. He felt like a smudge of charcoal on a pristine white canvas. The room smelled of old money, expensive perfume, polished leather, and the crisp, ozone scent of alpha pheromones that made the air feel heavy and pressurized. I still don't know why I'm here, Luke, Elian murmured, looking for an exit sign that wasn't blocked by a wall of tuxedos. I should be at the studio. I have a commission due on Tuesday. Forget the commission, Lucas said, his voice dropping an octave as his posture straightened. This is where the real money is. And besides, there's someone I want you to meet. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't a physical change, the AC didn't falter, the music didn't stop, but Elian felt it in the marrow of his bones. The hair on his arms stood up. A scent washed over him, cutting through the mix of floral perfumes and champagne. It was dark, rich, and terrifyingly potent. It smelled like cedar wood soaked in rain, with an underlying note of something sharp, like cold steel. Ah, Lucas said, a smile plastering itself onto his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. Here he comes. Elian turned. And the breath left his lungs. Walking toward them through the parting crowd was a man who looked like he had been carved from marble and shadow. He was tall, dominating the space around him with an effortless, predatory grace. His suit was black, bespoke, and fit his broad shoulders so perfectly that it looked like a second skin. But it was his face that froze Elian in place. He was devastatingly handsome in the way a storm is handsome, sharp cheekbones, a jawline that could cut glass, and eyes the color of obsidian. Those eyes were locked onto Elian. Not Lucas. Elian. Silas, Lucas greeted, stepping forward to offer a hand. I'm glad you could make it. Silas didn't look at Lucas. He took the hand, gave it a perfunctory shake, and dropped it, all without breaking eye contact with Elian. I wouldn't miss it, Silas said. His voice was a low baritone that vibrated in Elian's chest, wrapping around his ribs like smoke. Lucas has told me so much about you. Elian. Elian blinked, his mouth suddenly dry. I didn't know I was a topic of conversation. You are the only topic worth discussing, Silas replied smoothly. He took a step closer, invading Elian's personal space. It was subtle, socially acceptable, but to Elian's Omega instincts, it felt like being cornered. Silas reached out, his gloved hand taking Elian's. He didn't shake it. He lifted it, brushing his thumb over Elian's knuckles before bowing slightly. I've admired your work for a long time, Silas murmured. The blue period pieces you did last winter? The painting of the solitary bird in the storm, it spoke to me. Elian's heart hammered against his ribs. That painting had been in a tiny, hole-in-the-wall gallery. It hadn't sold. Nobody had looked at it twice. You saw that? Elian whispered. I see everything that matters, Silas said. He released Elian's hand, but the ghost of his touch lingered, burning hot. You look pale, Elian. Is the crowd too much? Just a little dizzy, Elian admitted. The scent of cedarwood was getting stronger, thicker. It was intoxicating and overwhelming all at once. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. The crystal chandelier above blurred into a streak of light. Here, Silas said, snapping his fingers. A waiter appeared instantly with a glass of water. Drink. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command wrapped in velvet. Elian took the glass, his fingers trembling. He drank. The water was cold, but it didn't wash away the heat rising in his blood. If anything, the dizziness spiked. His knees felt like water. The sounds of the party, the laughter, the string quartet, began to sound like they were coming from underwater. Lucas, Elian slurred, reaching out for his friend. I think I need to go. He looked for Lucas, but Lucas was gone. He had vanished into the crowd, leaving Elian alone in the shadow of the Alpha. I've got you, a voice whispered right against his ear. Elian's legs gave out. He didn't hit the floor. Strong arms wrapped around his waist, pulling him flush against a chest that felt like a wall of iron. Elian's head lolled back, resting against a shoulder made of expensive wool. Shish, Silas soothed, his hand coming up to cup the back of Elian's head, pressing his face into the crook of his neck. Just let go, Elian. You've been fighting for so long. Just let go. The last thing Elian saw before the darkness swallowed him was Silas's face looking down at him. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't calling for a doctor. He was smiling. Elian woke up to the feeling of silk. It was everywhere, cool, slippery, and impossibly soft against his skin. He groaned, shifting his weight, and pain lanced through his temples. His head felt heavy, stuffed with cotton. He forced his eyes open. This wasn't his apartment. His apartment had peeling wallpaper, a drafty window that rattled when the wind blew, and a mattress that had seen better days. This room was a palace. The ceiling was vaulted, painted with a mural of storm clouds and angels. The walls were lined with dark mahogany and gold leaf. Massive floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the far wall, revealing a sprawling view of the city skyline at night, a sea of glittering lights far, far below. Elian sat up, the silk sheet pooling at his waist. He was wearing a nightshirt he didn't recognize. It was white, pristine, and smelled of him. Cedarwood and rain. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog in his brain. "Lucas!" Elian called out. His voice was a wreck, raspy and weak. Silence answered him. Elian scrambled out of the massive four-poster bed. His legs were shaky, but adrenaline pushed him forward. He ran to the door. It was heavy, solid oak with a brass handle. He twisted the handle. Locked. He rattled it, pulling with all his weight. "Hello? Is anyone there? Let me out." Nothing. He spun around, his eyes darting to the windows. He rushed over, pressing his hands against the glass. There was no latch. No handle. It was a solid pane of reinforced glass. He looked down. He was high up, 50 floors, maybe 60. The cars below looked like toys. He was trapped in a glass box in the sky. The sound of a lock clicking made him spin around. The heavy oak door swung open silently. Silas stood there. He had shed the tuxedo jacket and tie. Now he wore a charcoal dress shirt, the top buttons undone, revealing a glimpse of tanned skin. He held a silver tray with a steaming bowl of porcelain white porridge and a glass of water. He looked domestic. He looked calm. He looked terrifying. "You're awake," Silas said softly, stepping into the room and kicking the door shut behind him with his heel. "I was worried you'd sleep through dinner." Elian backed away until his spine hit the cold glass of the window. "Where am I? Where is Lucas?" Silas set the tray down on a small table near the bed. He moved with a deliberate, slow grace, like he was trying not to startle a wild animal. "Lucas had to leave," Silas said, his voice level. "He realized he wasn't equipped to take care of you." "Take care of me?" Elian's breath hitched. "I'm not a child. I don't need to be taken care of. I want to go home." Silas looked up then. His obsidian eyes darkened, the pupils blowing wide. "Home?" he repeated, as if the word was a foreign concept. "Elian, look around you." He gestured to the room, to the luxury, to the warmth. "Your apartment had black mold in the bathroom. The heating was broken. You were skipping meals to pay for paint." Silas listed the facts with a chilling accuracy. "That isn't a home. That was a struggle." He walked toward Elian. Elian wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. "Stay back," Elian warned, his voice trembling. Silas stopped just inches away. He reached out, his hand hovering near Elian's face. Elian flinched, turning his head away. "You reacted to the party," Silas lied. The lie was smooth, practiced. "You collapsed. The doctor said your stress levels were critical. Your body was shutting down, Elian." Silas's fingers finally made contact, grazing Elian's jawline. His skin was hot, his touch possessive. "I couldn't let you go back to that," Silas whispered, stepping closer until his body pressed Elian against the glass. The heat radiating off the alpha was overwhelming. "I brought you here. Where it's safe. Where the world can't hurt you anymore." "You locked the door," Elian accused, tears of frustration pricking his eyes. "If this is for my safety, why am I locked in?" Silas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It was a smile of absolute, unshakable control. "Because, my sweet Elian," Silas murmured, leaning down to brush his lips against the shell of Elian's ear. "You don't know what's good for you yet. But you will." Silas pulled back, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Eat your dinner. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out. Chapter 2. The morning sun didn't filter softly into the penthouse, it invaded. It struck the marble floors and bounced off the mirrored walls, filling the space with a brilliance that made Elian's eyes ache. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night curled in the center of the massive bed, listening to the silence of the high-rise. It was a suffocating kind of quiet, the kind that exists only where money is thick enough to insulate against the noise of the real world. The door to the bedroom was unlocked. Elian had discovered this at 4 a.m., but he hadn't left. Fear, heavy and irrational, had kept him pinned to the mattress. But now, with the sun exposing every corner of his gilded prison, the urge to run outweighed the fear. He crept out of the room, his bare feet making no sound on the plush runner rug. The penthouse was a labyrinth of modern art and cold surfaces. He passed a living room that looked like a showroom, a library filled with books that had never been cracked open, and finally, the source of a smell that made his empty stomach cramp with hunger. Coffee. And something savory, like searing meat. Elian followed the scent to the kitchen. It was an industrial-grade space of stainless steel and black granite. And there, standing by the stove, was Silas. He looked different in the daylight. The terrifying shadow from the night before had softened into something deceptively domestic. He was wearing gray sweatpants that hung low on his hips and a fitted white t-shirt that strained against the muscles of his back as he flipped an omelet. "Good morning," Silas said without turning around. Elian froze in the doorway, his hand gripping the frame until his knuckles turned white. "I want to leave." Silas turned then, leaning his hip against the counter. He held a spatula loosely in one hand, looking for all the world like a boyfriend cooking Sunday brunch. "Coffee?" Silas offered, ignoring the demand. He gestured to a steaming mug on the island. "It's a Robusta blend. I remember you telling Lucas you hated acidic roasts." "I don't want coffee," Elian snapped, though his hands shook. "I want my phone. I want my clothes. And I want to go home." Silas sighed, a sound of patient disappointment. He set the spatula down and walked around the island. As he moved, the air in the kitchen changed. The scent of cedarwood flared, spiking with something sweeter, heavier. Pheromones. Elian's knees buckled slightly. It was biological warfare. His omega instincts, hardwired to respond to a dominant alpha, screamed at him to submit, to calm down, to be good. "Elian," Silas said gently, stopping just out of reach. "We need to talk about home." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his back pocket and slid it across the granite counter. "What is this?" Elian asked, eyeing the paper like it was a bomb. "I called your landlord this morning," Silas said. "To tell him you were safe. Apparently, you've been struggling more than you let on." Elian snatched the paper. It wasn't an eviction notice, it was a receipt. A receipt for the termination of his lease and the disposal of his property. "He said you were 3 months behind," Silas lied smoothly. His voice was laced with sympathy. "He was going to throw your things on the curb today. I simply expedited the process. I paid off your debt, Elian. You don't owe him anything anymore." You terminated my lease." Elian's voice cracked. The paper shook in his hands. "My paintings. My sketchbooks. My mother's locket. Where are they?" "Safe," Silas promised. "I had movers collect everything of value. The rest, the broken furniture, the trash, is gone." "You had no right." Elian shouted, the anger finally piercing through the pheromone haze. "That was my life. You can't just erase it." "I didn't erase it," Silas said, his voice dropping, becoming steel wrapped in silk. "I upgraded it. Elian, look at me." Elian didn't want to, but the command tugged at his chin like an invisible string. He looked up into those obsidian eyes. "You were drowning," Silas murmured. "I saw your bank statements. I saw the empty fridge. You were starving yourself to buy canvas. That isn't a life. That's survival. And you are too precious to merely survive." "I have a job," Elian argued weakly, though the fight was draining out of him. "I have a shift at the café at noon." "I called them too," Silas said. "I told them you were hospitalized. Which is true, in a way. You're recovering." "They'll fire me." "Let them." Silas shrugged, dismissing Elian's livelihood as if it were a speck of dust. "You don't need to pour coffee for ungrateful tourists anymore. You are an artist, Elian. And artists need to create. Silas reached out and took Elian's hand. This time, Elian didn't pull away. He was too stunned, his entire reality dismantled in the span of a 5-minute conversation. No home. No job. No money. He was completely, utterly hollowed out. Come, Silas whispered, interlacing their fingers. Let me show you why you're here. He led Elian out of the kitchen, down a long hallway that led to the north wing of the penthouse. He stopped before a set of double doors. I told you I admired your work, Silas said, his hand resting on the brass handle. I meant it. I don't want to cage you, Elian. I want to unleash you. He threw the doors open. Elian's breath caught in his throat. It was a studio. But calling it a studio felt like an insult. It was a cathedral of light. The entire north wall was glass, slanted to capture the perfect, consistent daylight that painters killed for. The floors were polished concrete, splattered intentionally with an artistic flair. But it was the supplies that made Elian's knees weak. Rows of easels stood waiting. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with tubes of paint, Winsor and Newton, Old Holland, colors that cost more per ounce than gold. There were brushes of every shape and size, canvases stretched and primed, and rolls of Belgian linen. In the corner, Elian saw a stack of boxes. His boxes. His old sketchbooks, his mother's locket, and the few things from his old life that actually mattered were safe and waiting. You. Elian whispered, stepping into the room. The smell of linseed oil and turpentine hit him, the smell of home. You did this. For you, Silas said, leaning against the door frame, watching Elian with a predatory satisfaction. Only for you. Elian walked to the central easel. He reached out, his fingers trembling as he touched a tube of lapis lazuli paint. He had dreamed of using this color. He had stared at it in shop windows for years. Why? Elian asked, turning back to the alpha. Why go to all this trouble? You barely know me. Silas crossed the room in 3 long strides. He stopped behind Elian, close enough that his chest brushed Elian's back. He wrapped his arms around Elian's waist, trapping him against the easel, chin resting on Elian's shoulder. I know you, Silas murmured, his voice vibrating through Elian's spine. I know the way you look when you're thinking about a composition. I know you bite your lip when you're mixing colors. I know you're lonely, Elian. Just like me. The pheromones surged again, thicker this time, sweeter. They wrapped around Elian's mind like warm honey. The fear from the morning began to recede, replaced by a confusing, heavy warmth. His brain screamed, he is controlling you. He stole your life. His heart whispered, he saved you. He sees you. Elian leaned back. Just an inch. It was an unconscious movement, a surrender to the alpha's gravity. I can paint? Elian asked, his voice small. You can do anything, Silas promised, pressing a kiss to the pulse point below Elian's ear. As long as you do it here. With me. And if I want to go outside? Silas's arms tightened. Not painfully, but with a firmness that allowed no argument. The world outside doesn't understand you, Elian. They let you starve. They let you suffer. Silas turned Elian around, forcing him to look up. I will never let you suffer. Why would you want to leave paradise to go back to hell? Elian looked into those dark, mesmerizing eyes. He thought of his cold apartment. He thought of the eviction notices he had been hiding. He thought of the way Lucas had abandoned him. And then he looked at the studio. A dream made real. Okay, Elian whispered. The word felt like a lock clicking into place. Silas smiled. It was the smile of a man who had just won a war without firing a single shot. He leaned down and kissed Elian, soft, chaste, and terrifyingly final. Good boy, Silas murmured against his lips. Now, paint for me. Chapter 3. 2 weeks had passed, dissolving into a blur of oil paint and expensive wine. Time in the penthouse didn't move in hours or minutes, it moved in moods. When Silas was happy, the days were golden, filled with classical music and soft touches. When Silas was stressed, usually from phone calls taken in his locked office, the air in the apartment grew heavy, the scent of cedarwood sharpening into something that smelled like ozone before a lightning strike. Elian had learned to navigate these shifts. He had learned that submission brought him peace. He stood before a massive canvas in the center of the studio. He had been working on it for 3 days. It was a chaotic swirl of stormy grays and bruised purples, a depiction of a bird caught in a downdraft. It was dark. It was honest. It's surprisingly morose, a voice said from behind him. Elian jumped, his brush slipping and leaving a streak of unintentional black across the canvas. He hadn't heard Silas enter. He never did. The alpha moved with the silent, terrifying grace of a panther stalking through tall grass. Silas was standing just a few feet away, dressed in a navy suit that accentuated the breadth of his shoulders. He held the tablet in one hand, his expression unreadable as he studied the painting. I was just experimenting with texture, Elian stammered, his heart doing a nervous flutter in his chest. It's not finished. It feels frightened, Silas observed, stepping closer. He didn't look at Elian, he stared at the painted bird. Is that how you feel, Elian? Frightened? The question was a trap. Elian knew the correct answer. No, Elian lied, forcing a smile. I feel safe. You've given me everything. Silas finally looked at him. His eyes softened, the obsidian warming just a fraction. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind Elian's ear, his thumb lingering on Elian's cheekbone. Good, Silas murmured. That's all I want. A sharp, jarring sound shattered the moment. It was the intercom buzzer. Elian froze. In 2 weeks, the buzzer had never rung. No one came here. Deliveries were left in the private elevator lobby. The world outside had ceased to exist, severed by 50 floors of steel and glass. Silas stiffened. His hand fell away from Elian's face, his posture shifting instantly from lover to guardian. The warmth evaporated from the room, replaced by a cold, pressurized tension. Who is that? Elian asked, looking toward the hallway. Ignore it, Silas commanded, turning away. Probably a mistake. The buzzer sounded again. Longer this time. Insistent. Urgent. It doesn't sound like a mistake, Elian said, stepping around the easel. Maybe it's a package? Or. I said ignore it. Silas's voice was a whip crack. Elian flinched, stopping dead in his tracks. But curiosity, dangerous and itching, bloomed in his chest. He took a step toward the door. Elian, Silas warned, his voice dropping to a low growl. I'm just going to check the monitor, Elian whispered. He moved before Silas could grab him, rushing to the wall-mounted panel in the hallway that controlled the smart home features. He tapped the video feed for the front entrance. The screen flickered to life. Elian's breath hitched. Standing in the hallway outside the penthouse doors, looking disheveled and frantic, was Lucas. It's Lucas, Elian gasped, relief flooding him. Silas, it's Lucas. He came back. Elian reached for the unlock button, but a hand clamped over his wrist. It wasn't gentle. Silas yanked his hand away from the panel, his grip bruising. Don't, Silas hissed. Why? Elian struggled, trying to pull free. He's my best friend. He's worried about me. Let him in. He isn't worried about you, Silas said, his face twisting into a sneer of disgust. He's here for money. That's all Lucas is. A leech. That's a lie. Elian shouted. On the screen, Lucas began to pound on the door. They couldn't hear the sound through the soundproofed walls, but the image was violent. Lucas was shouting something, his face red. Go to your room, Silas ordered, physically turning Elian away from the screen. No. Elian dug his heels in. I want to talk to him. Silas grabbed Elian by the shoulders, shaking him once, hard. The pheromones exploded into the air, thick, heavy, and dominating. Elian's knees buckled, his head swimming. You are not in a state to see anyone, Silas said, his voice cold and absolute. Look at you. You're shaking. You're unstable. If he sees you like this, he'll think I'm mistreating you. You are mistreating me. I am protecting you. Silas roared. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. Now go to the bedroom. Stay there. I will deal with this. He didn't wait for Elian to agree. He marched Elian down the hall, shoved him gently but firmly into the master bedroom, and slammed the door. The lock clicked. Elian stood in the silence, his chest heaving. He wasn't going to just sit there. He scanned the room. The main door was locked. The windows were sealed. But there was a smart panel on the wall by the bed, used for controlling the lights and blinds. Elian rushed to it. He tapped frantically, navigating the menus. Lighting. Climate. Security. He pressed security. Then cameras. He selected the foyer feed. The small screen lit up. Elian watched, his heart hammering in his throat, as Silas opened the front door. Lucas stumbled in immediately. The audio on the panel was faint and tinny but audible. "What the hell is going on, Silas?" Lucas was shouting. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing the same suit from the gala. "I haven't heard from him in weeks. His phone is dead. His apartment is empty." "Lower your voice," Silas said. He stood like a statue, completely unbothered by Lucas's frenzy. "You are disturbing the peace." "Where is he?" Lucas demanded, trying to push past Silas. "I know he's here," the doorman said. Silas caught Lucas by the throat. It happened so fast Elian almost missed it. 1 second, Lucas was moving. The next, he was pinned against the wall, feet dangling inches off the floor. Elian clapped a hand over his mouth to stifle a scream. "He is here," Silas said, his voice terrifyingly calm through the speakers. "And he is happy. Happier than he ever was with a failure like you dragging him down." "He isn't yours," Lucas choked out, clawing at Silas's hand. "He is," Silas corrected. "He knows it." "I know it. And now, you know it." Silas leaned in close. "If you ever come back here," Silas whispered, the threat distinct, "I will ensure that the little import business you run gets audited by every agency in the government. I will burn your life to the ground, Lucas. Do you understand?" Silas dropped him. Lucas collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. "He doesn't want to see you," Silas lied, towering over him. "He told me to send you away. He's embarrassed by you, Lucas." "That's not true," Elian whispered to the empty bedroom. "That's not true." Lucas looked up, eyes filled with fear. He scrambled backward, picked himself up, and fled out the open door without looking back. Silas watched him go. Then, slowly, he turned his head and looked directly at the security camera in the corner of the foyer ceiling. He knew. Elian scrambled away from the panel, diving onto the bed just as the bedroom door unlocked. Silas walked in. He adjusted his cuffs, his breathing perfectly even. He looked at Elian, who was curled up on the mattress, feigning sleep or illness. "He's gone," Silas said softly. Elian sat up, tears staining his cheeks. What did he want? Silas sat on the edge of the bed. He reached out and wiped a tear from Elian's face. "He came to say goodbye," Silas lied. The ease of it made Elian's blood run cold. "He's moving to Hong Kong. Running from some debts, I imagine. He didn't want to see you. Said it would be too emotional." "He didn't ask to see me?" Elian whispered, testing the depth of the deception. "No," Silas said, looking Elian dead in the eye. "He asked for money. I gave it to him. And he left." Elian looked at the man he had been sleeping beside. He looked at the handsome face, the concerned eyes, the gentle hands. And he saw the monster beneath the skin. "I tried to call him," Elian said, his voice trembling. "Earlier. My phone wasn't in the drawer." Silas sighed. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out Elian's phone. It was sleek and familiar. "I took it," Silas admitted. "Why?" "Because it's a distraction," Silas said, standing up and walking to the balcony door. He opened it. The wind howled outside. "You are obsessing over the past, Elian. You are painting scared birds and crying over friends who sell you out for cash. It's toxic." Silas held the phone over the balcony railing. "No." Elian scrambled off the bed. "Silas, don't. That has all my contacts, my photos." "You don't need them," Silas said. "You have me." He opened his hand. The phone fell. It tumbled down 50 stories, a piece of Elian's life disappearing into the void. Silas closed the balcony door and locked it. He turned back to Elian, who stood frozen in the center of the room, shattered. "We need to focus," Silas said, walking back to him. He gripped Elian's chin, forcing him to look up. "No more distractions. No more outside world. What do you want from me?" Elian sobbed. "Go back to the studio," Silas commanded gently. "Paint over that bird, Elian. It's ugly." He leaned down and kissed Elian's forehead. "Paint me. Paint us. Make something beautiful. Or I'll have to take away the brushes, too. Chapter 4. Paint didn't lie. That was the first thing Elian had learned in art school. You could lie with words, you could lie with a smile, but you couldn't lie with a brushstroke. Tension, fear, hesitation, it all bled onto the canvas. Elian stood in the center of the sun-drenched studio, staring at the portrait on the easel. It was Silas. Technically, it was perfect. Elian had captured the sharp aristocracy of his jawline, the heavy-lidded gaze of his eyes, the precise curve of his mouth. But there was something wrong with it. The eyes weren't warm, they were flat, like a shark's. The hands resting on the arm of the painted chair looked less like they were resting and more like they were gripping. It's breathtaking, Silas said. Elian didn't flinch this time. He was getting used to the ghost-like way Silas moved. He turned slowly. Silas was standing in the doorway, buttoning the cuffs of a crisp white shirt. He smelled of soap and that ever-present cedarwood. It's not finished, Elian said, his voice devoid of inflection. The light in the eyes is wrong. It looks perfect to me, Silas murmured, walking over to inspect the work. He stood close enough that his body heat radiated against Elian's arm. I have a conference call with the Singapore partners. It will take an hour, perhaps 2. I expect you'll be here when I'm done? Where else would I go? Elian asked. It wasn't a question, it was a surrender. Silas smiled, pleased by the obedience. He leaned down, kissed Elian's cheek, and left. Elian listened to his footsteps recede down the hallway, followed by the heavy thud of the office door closing and the click of the magnetic lock engaging. Elian waited. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 10. He set the brush down. He walked out of the studio, his bare feet silent on the polished concrete. He moved down the hallway, past the living room, toward the office. Usually, the office was a fortress. Silas kept it locked, digital keypads glowing red. But yesterday, Elian had noticed something. When the cleaning staff came, silent, uniformed women who refused to make eye contact with Elian, Silas unlocked the room for them. And sometimes, just sometimes, the mechanism lagged. Elian stopped in front of the heavy mahogany doors. The keypad light was green. Silas hadn't locked it. He was so confident in Elian's submission, so sure that he had broken the wild out of him, that he had gotten sloppy. Elian pushed the handle. The door swung open silently. The office was freezing. The air conditioning was cranked high, preserving the walls of books and the massive server racks humming in the corner. Silas wasn't there. The conference call must have been video-free because the room was empty, though a voice murmured from a headset lying on the massive ebony desk. Silas was likely in the adjoining private bathroom. Elian moved. He didn't know what he was looking for. He just knew that the version of reality Silas was feeding him, the accidental meeting, the saving from poverty, felt thin, like paper stretched over a hole. He went to the desk. It was impossibly neat. A laptop, a fountain pen, a single coaster. He tugged at the drawers. Locked. Locked. He tried the bottom one. It stuck, then slid open. There were no files inside. Just a black leather portfolio. Elian pulled it out. It was heavy. He opened it, his hands shaking so hard the leather cover flapped. The first photo fell out and fluttered to the floor. Elian stared at it. It was a picture of him. But not from the gala. Not from the penthouse. It was Elian standing in the rain, 3 months ago, waiting for the bus. He was wearing his old, oversized coat, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked miserable. Elian flipped the page. Elian is at the coffee shop, laughing with a customer. Elian is buying groceries, counting coins in his palm. Elian is sleeping on the park bench during a lunch break. The date stamped in the corner of the photos went back 6 months. 6 months before the gala. 6 months before, Lucas had introduced them. Elian felt bile rise in his throat. This wasn't admiration. This was predation. He turned the page again. Documents. Subject, Lucas Vance. Debt profile. Notes, subject is malleable. Gambling debts are substantial. Offer a buyout in exchange for an introduction. Leverage required, threat of audit. Elian gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. Lucas hadn't sold him out because he was a bad friend. Lucas had been blackmailed. Silas had bought Lucas's debt specifically to use him as a pawn. Next page. Property, 402 East Row, Elian's apartment. Action. Purchase building via shell company, Obsidian Holdings. Initiate eviction protocols immediately upon acquisition. Elian dropped the portfolio. The papers were scattered across the pristine rug like dead leaves. The eviction notice. The firing from the café. The severe reaction at the gala. None of it was real. Silas hadn't saved him from a burning building. Silas had set the fire, blocked the exits, and then waited outside with a blanket, pretending to be a hero. I was wondering when you'd find that. The voice came from the doorway. It wasn't angry. It wasn't a surprise. It was terrifyingly conversational. Elian spun around. Silas was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't wearing his headset anymore. His eyes were dark, devoid of the warmth he usually faked for Elian. You. Elian choked out, backing away until his hips hit the desk. You stalked me. I studied you, Silas corrected, walking into the room. He stepped over the scattered photos without looking down. There is a difference. You bought my building, Elian accused, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. You fired me. You ruined my life. I curated your life, Silas said calmly. He stopped a few feet away, looming like a thunderhead. Look at those photos, Elian. Look at them. You were miserable. You were wasting your potential pouring coffee for idiots and living in squalor. I didn't ruin your life, I pruned the dead branches so you could bloom. You drugged me at the gala, Elian whispered. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The dizziness. The reaction. There was no stress response. You put something in my drink. Silas didn't deny it. He didn't even blink. A necessary measure. You are stubborn, Elian. If I had asked you to come with me, you would have said no. You would have clung to your pride and your poverty. Silas reached out, his hand snapping out to grip Elian's chin, forcing him to look up. I did what was necessary to secure my prize. I am not a prize. Elian screamed, slapping Silas's hand away. I am a person. I have a life. You have this life. Silas roared back. The mask shattered. The calm, aristocratic facade cracked, revealing the raw, jagged obsession beneath. Silas grabbed Elian by the shoulders and slammed him back against the desk. Pain shot through Elian's spine, but the fear was sharper. You have me. Silas shouted, his face inches from Elian's. I gave you a palace. I gave you a studio the world would kill for. I cleared your debts. I removed the parasites like Lucas who were bleeding you dry. And you look at me like I'm the villain? Because you are. Elian cried, tears streaming down his face. You're a monster. You stole me. I earned you. Silas hissed, his grip tightening until Elian whimpered. I watched you for months. I learned every tick, every smile, every sadness. I know you better than you know yourself. You think you want freedom? Freedom is starving in the cold. Freedom is being alone. Silas leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating growl. You wouldn't survive a day without me, Elian. You are soft. You are fragile. You need a keeper. Elian looked into the eyes of the man he had started to trust. He saw no love there. He saw ownership. He saw a man looking at a bird in a cage, convinced that clipping its wings was an act of mercy. Something inside Elian broke. But it wasn't his spirit. It was the illusion. The romance was dead. The protection was a lie. The gratitude he had felt, the confusing affection that had started to bloom, it all froze, turning into a sharp, cold shard of ice in the center of his chest. Elian stopped struggling. He went limp in Silas's grip. Silas paused, sensing the shift. He pulled back slightly, his chest heaving, searching Elian's face for fear. I understand, Elian whispered. It was a lie. The first true, calculated lie Elian had ever told him. Silas blinked, the rage receding slightly, replaced by wariness. You understand? I understand, Elian repeated, lowering his eyes in a show of submission. You did it for me. I was ungrateful. Silas stared at him for a long moment. He was analyzing and calculating. Then, slowly, the tension drained from his shoulders. He smoothed the lapels of Elian's shirt, his touch returning to that sickening, possessive gentleness. Yes, Silas murmured, stroking Elian's hair. You were just confused. It's a lot to process. Silas leaned down and kissed Elian. Elian didn't push him away. He didn't shudder. He stood perfectly still, letting the monster kiss him, while in his mind, he was already burning the penthouse to the ground. I'm sorry, I yelled, Silas whispered against Elian's lips. I love you so much, Elian. It makes me crazy when you don't see it. I see it now, Elian said softly. He looked at the photos scattered on the floor, the evidence of his capture. I really see it now. Silas smiled, satisfied. He thought he had broken the horse. He didn't realize he had just handed the prisoner the key to the lock. Trust. Silas thought he had won. But Elian knew the truth. The only way out of a cage this strong wasn't to break the bars. It was to wait for the keeper to leave the door open. Come, Silas said, pulling Elian away from the desk. Let's go to bed. You look exhausted. I am, Elian said. I really am. He followed Silas out of the office, leaving the photos on the floor. He didn't need them anymore. He had the image burned into his memory. The victim was gone. The survivor had just woken up. Chapter 5. Submission, Elian discovered, was an art form. It required the same attention to detail as a hyperrealistic portrait. One wrong shade of tone, one brushstroke of hesitation, and the illusion would shatter. Elian sat on the floor of the living room, his head resting on Silas's knee. Outside, the city was a blur of rain and gray clouds, but inside, the fireplace crackled, casting a warm, deceptive glow over the Italian leather furniture. Silas was reading a report on his tablet, his large hand idly stroking Elian's hair. It was a rhythmic, possessive motion. Petting the prize dog. You're quiet today, Silas murmured, his eyes never leaving the screen. I'm just happy, Elian lied. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. It's peaceful here. You were right. Silas paused. The stroking stopped. He set the tablet down and looked at Elian. I was right. Silas asked, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was the smile of a god whose devotee had finally learned the correct prayer. About the world, Elian said, lifting his head to meet those obsidian eyes. He forced his expression to be open and adoring. It's too loud out there. It's too chaotic. I feel centered here. With you. Silas's pupils dilated. The scent of cedarwood sweetened, losing its sharp, ozone edge of suspicion. He reached down, cupping Elian's face with both hands, treating him like fragile porcelain. I knew you would understand eventually, Silas whispered. I knew we were soulmates. It just took a little calibration. I'm sorry I fought you, Elian said, leaning into the touch. I was just scared. Shish. It's forgotten. Silas leaned down and kissed him. Elian kissed back. He poured every ounce of his hatred into that kiss, disguising it as passion. He let his hands tangle in Silas's hair, pulling him closer, playing the role of the needy, dependent Omega perfectly. In his mind, however, Elian was calculating. It had been 3 weeks since he found the portfolio. 3 weeks of playing the perfect housewife. He cooked meals Silas liked. He painted portraits that flattered Silas's ego, making the alpha look heroic and noble instead of predatory. He stopped asking to go outside. He stopped asking about Lucas. He had become exactly what Silas wanted, a beautiful, silent reflection of Silas's own power. I have a surprise for you, Silas said, pulling back. His eyes were gleaming with a manic sort of joy. A surprise? Elian asked, tilting his head. Stand up. Elian stood. Silas rose with him, towering over him. The alpha walked to the hall table where he had left a velvet box earlier that evening. Elian had seen it, but he hadn't asked. Curiosity was a trait of the old Elian. The new Elian waited to be told. Silas returned with the box. He opened it. Inside lay a necklace. It was platinum, studded with diamonds that caught the firelight. But it wasn't delicate. It was thick, heavy, and structurally rigid. It was a collar. A very expensive, very beautiful collar. It's breathtaking, Elian whispered, though his stomach churned. Turn around, Silas commanded softly. Elian turned. He lifted his hair, exposing the vulnerable nape of his neck. He felt the cold metal settle against his skin. It was heavy. He heard the distinct, mechanical click of the clasp locking. There, Silas breathed, his hands resting on Elian's shoulders. Now everyone will know. Know what? Elian asked, turning back to face him. that you are mine. Silas traced the diamonds with his thumb. It suits you, Elian. It makes you look cherished. Elian touched the cold metal. It felt like a shackle. But he smiled. A shy, grateful smile that he had practiced in the mirror for hours. Thank you, Silas. I love it. Silas looked at him, searching for any sign of sarcasm. Finding none, his chest swelled with pride. The final barrier of his paranoia crumbled. He had broken the horse. He had tamed the wild bird. I want to celebrate, Silas announced suddenly. Tonight marks 1 month. 1 month since I brought you home. Celebrate how? Elian asked. Shall I cook the sea bass? No, Silas said, shaking his head. No cooking tonight. I want to show you off. Elian's heart stopped. Then it restarted, hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This was it. This was the opening he had been starving for. Show me off. Elian feigned hesitation. He took a half step back. You mean, leave the penthouse? Dinner, Silas said firmly. At Lodge. It's the highest-rated restaurant in the city. I rented out the private balcony. But. Elian widened his eyes, letting a tremor of fake anxiety enter his voice. Is it safe? What if I have another reaction? What if someone tries to talk to me? He had to make Silas convince him. If Elian seemed eager to leave, Silas would lock the doors instantly. Silas stepped forward, wrapping his arms around Elian, crushing him against his chest. I will be right there, Silas promised, his voice dripping with arrogance. No one will touch you. No one will even dare to look at you the wrong way. I am the barrier, Elian. As long as you are with me, you are untouchable. You promise? Elian whispered into Silas's shirt. I promise. Okay, Elian said, letting out a shaky sigh. If you're with me, I'll go. Good boy. An hour later, Elian stood in front of the full-length mirror in the master bedroom. He looked like a prince from a dark fairy tale. Silas had dressed him in a suit of crushed velvet, a deep midnight blue that made his skin look like alabaster. The diamond collar glittered at his throat, a stark reminder of his status. He looked expensive. He looked owned. Elian stared at his own reflection. He looked at the eyes that had cried for weeks, the hands that had painted lies to survive. This is a performance, he told his reflection. You are an actor on a stage. The curtain falls tonight. The door opened. Silas entered, wearing a tuxedo that matched the sharpness of his features. He stopped, staring at Elian with a hunger that was terrifying to behold. Perfection, Silas murmured. He walked up behind Elian, their gazes meeting in the mirror. Silas placed his hands on Elian's waist, looking at the image of them together. The powerful Alpha and his beautiful, submissive Omega. It was the picture Silas had been trying to paint since the beginning. Do you have everything? Silas asked. I have you, Elian answered simply. Silas smirked. He checked his pockets. Phone. Wallet. Keys. Elian watched in the reflection. He saw where Silas put the key card, the master key that controlled the private elevator. Inside jacket pocket. Left side. Let's go, Silas said. The car is waiting downstairs. They walked to the elevator. For the first time in a month, the heavy steel doors slid open for Elian. He stepped inside. Silas followed, pressing his thumb against the biometric scanner to select the ground floor. The machinery hummed to life. As the elevator began its descent, 50 floors of gravity pulling them down toward the earth, Silas took Elian's hand, interlacing their fingers. You're trembling, Silas noted, squeezing his hand. Don't be scared. I'm not scared, Elian said, staring at the floor numbers ticking down. 50, 49, 48. I'm just excited. It wasn't a lie. The adrenaline coursing through his veins was electric. Silas leaned over and kissed his temple. Tonight is going to be perfect. Just us. Forever. Elian squeezed Silas's hand back. 40, 30, 20. Forever, Elian echoed. The elevator hit the lobby with a soft chime. The doors opened. Chapter 6. Lodge sat atop the city like a crown jewel, a glass rotunda floating amongst the clouds. The air inside smelled of truffles, aged cognac, and the terrifying sterility of extreme wealth. Elian sat at the best table in the house, the city light sprawling beneath him like a carpet of fallen stars. Across the white linen tablecloth, Silas watched him. He hadn't touched his wine. He was feasting on the sight of Elian in the diamond collar. You haven't touched your risotto, Silas noted, his voice low and intimate, cutting through the soft hum of the restaurant. Is it not to your liking? I can have the chef replaced. It's perfect, Elian said quickly, picking up his fork. His hand trembled, just slightly. I'm just overwhelmed. It's so beautiful up here. Not as beautiful as you, Silas said. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing the cool diamonds at Elian's throat. Everyone is looking at you, Elian. They're wondering who the Omega is who captured the heart of Silas Vane. They're jealous. Elian forced a blush. You're embarrassing me. I'm claiming you. A waiter approached the table to refill the water glasses. He was young and tired-looking, with a smudge of flour on his uniform sleeve. Silas didn't even glance at him. To Silas, the staff was furniture. But Elian looked. His breath hitched. It was Jamie. Jamie had worked the morning shift at the café where Elian used to pour coffee. They had shared stale donuts and complained about tips for 2 years. Jamie's eyes widened as he poured the water. He looked at Elian, at the velvet suit, the bruises hidden under makeup, and the diamond collar. Recognition flashed in Jamie's eyes. Then confusion. Then horror. Don't say anything, Elian pleaded with his eyes. Please, Jamie, don't say my name. Silas was busy swirling his wine, basking in his own reflection in the window. He didn't see the silent exchange. He didn't see Jamie's hand shake as he set the pitcher down. Everything all right? Silas asked sharply, sensing the disruption in the service rhythm. He finally looked at the waiter with a sneer. You're spilling water on the cloth. Apologies, sir, Jamie mumbled, bowing his head. He looked at Elian one last time, a question burning in his gaze. Do you need help? Elian gave the tiniest, almost imperceptible nod. He waited until Jamie had retreated to the service station near the kitchen doors. Silas, Elian said softly, placing his hand over his stomach. I think the richness of the food is a bit much for me. My stomach is cramping. Silas's expression shifted instantly from arrogance to concern. Are you ill? We can leave. No, Elian insisted, reaching out to touch Silas's hand. I just need a moment. To splash some water on my face. The restroom? Silas frowned. He scanned the room. The restroom entrance was visible from their table, a corridor of marble and gold. I'll walk you to the door, Silas said, standing up. Elian's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Okay. They walked across the dining room. Elian could feel the weight of the collar, the stares of the patrons. Silas walked with a proprietary hand on the small of Elian's back, guiding him. They reached the restroom corridor. I'll be right here, Silas said, leaning against the wall, crossing his arms. He looked like a sentry guarding a vault. Don't take too long, Elian. I miss you when you're gone. 2 minutes, Elian promised. He pushed the restroom door open and stepped inside. As soon as the door clicked shut, the facade dropped. Elian gasped, bracing his hands against the marble sink, staring at his reflection. His eyes were wild, frantic. He checked the room. No windows. Just vents too small to crawl through. It was a dead end. Panic clawed at his throat. If he went back out there, he would never leave the penthouse again. This was his only chance. The door opened. Elian spun around, terror seizing him. It wasn't Silas. It was Jamie. The waiter slipped inside, locking the door behind him. He looked at Elian, then at the collar. Elian? Jamie whispered. Jesus, man. The cafe manager said you were in the hospital. What is that around your neck? Jamie, Elian choked out, grabbing his friend's shoulders. I don't have time to explain. He kidnapped me. He's crazy. I need to get out. Is there a back exit? Kidnapped. Jamie's face went pale. That guy out there? That's Silas Vane. He owns half the city. He owns me right now, Elian hissed. Please, Jamie. Is there a way out? Jamie swallowed hard, then nodded. Through the kitchen. There's a service elevator for the trash. It goes straight to the alley. Show me. Please. But he's watching the hall, Jamie said. If we walk out. He's watching the guest hall, Elian realized. He pointed to a nondescript panel on the far wall of the restroom. What's that? Janitor's closet. It connects to the staff hallway. Open it. Jamie fumbled for his key card and swiped it. The panel clicked open. Go, Jamie whispered. I'll go out there and spill a tray or something. Distract him. Call the police, Elian said, gripping Jamie's hand. Tell them everything. Run, Elian. Elian ducked into the dark closet, pushing through hanging mops and buckets, and burst out into the bright, chaotic noise of the commercial kitchen. Chefs were shouting. Pans were sizzling. Steam filled the air. Elian didn't stop. He was a flash of midnight blue velvet sprinting through the white-coated brigade. Hey, a sous chef shouted. You can't be back here. Elian ignored him. He saw the silver doors of the service elevator at the far end. He ran, his expensive dress shoes slipping on the greasy tile. He hit the call button. Nothing happened. It was slow. Too slow. From the dining room, a commotion erupted. He heard a shout. A crash of glass. And then, a roar that didn't sound human. Elian. Silas knew. Elian abandoned the elevator. He saw the fire exit sign glowing green above a heavy steel door. He threw his weight against the crash bar. The door flew open. The night air hit him like a physical blow, cold, wet, and smelling of ozone. He was on the external fire escape, 50 stories up. The wind whipped his hair across his face. The stairs spiraled down into the darkness of the alley below. He didn't look down. He ran. His shoes clattered against the metal grate. He tore off the velvet jacket and threw it over the railing, watching it flutter away into the darkness. He ripped the diamond collar, clawing at the clasp until his fingernails broke, but it wouldn't give. Clang. 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 Heavy footsteps shook the metal stairs above him. You can't run from me. Silas's voice boomed from above, distorted by the wind and rage. I will burn this city to find you. Elian didn't answer. He scrambled down, slipping, scraping his hands on the rusted railing. His lungs burned. His legs screamed. He hit the ground floor alley with a splash, landing in a puddle of oily water. He was out. He stumbled onto the street. It was a busy Friday night. Crowds of people, cars, and noise. For the first time, the chaos didn't feel overwhelming. It felt like armor. Elian merged into the crowd. He kept his head down, hiding the glitter of the diamonds at his throat with his hand. He wove through tourists, drunks, and couples. He glanced back. At the mouth of the alley, Silas stood. He was soaked in rain, his tuxedo ruined, his chest heaving. He looked like a demon exorcised from heaven. He scanned the crowd, his eyes wild, searching for his prize. But Elian was just another shadow in the city now. He turned a corner and disappeared into the subway entrance, the turnstile clicking shut behind him like the lock of a cage finally breaking open. Epilogue, the one that got away. 6 months later. The penthouse was silent. It wasn't the peaceful silence of a sanctuary, it was the dead silence of a mausoleum. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the sun that Silas used to claim was for Elian's art. Silas sat in the leather armchair facing the fireplace. The fire was out. Ash lay cold in the grate. In his hand, he held a glass of whiskey that he hadn't drunk. On the table beside him lay a single, crumpled piece of paper, a police report filed by one Lucas Vance and corroborated by a waiter named Jamie. The investigation had been expensive to suppress. Lawyers, bribes, connections. Silas was still a free man. He was still the king of the city. But his castle was empty. He looked at the wall where the portrait of himself used to hang, the one Elian had painted. It was gone. In a fit of rage, the week after Elian vanished, Silas had taken a knife to every canvas in the studio. He had shredded the beautiful lies Elian had created for him. But destroying them hadn't made him feel better. It had just left him with nothing. He closed his eyes. He could still smell cedarwood and rain, but the scent of turpentine and linseed oil, the scent of life, was gone. I gave you everything, Silas whispered to the empty room. Why wasn't it enough? The silence didn't answer. It never did anymore. Across the city, in a neighborhood where the street lights flickered and the sirens wailed, Elian sat on a mismatched stool. His studio was actually just the corner of a one-bedroom apartment he shared with a graphic designer named Sarah. The light wasn't perfect, it came through a dusty window that faced a brick wall, but it was natural. Elian wiped a smudge of Prussian blue off his cheek. He was wearing an oversized sweater he'd bought at a thrift store for $5. It was soft, worn, and smelled like laundry detergent. He looked at the canvas in front of him. It wasn't a portrait of a man. It was a painting of a city street in the rain. It was messy, chaotic, and vibrant. In the center of the crowd, a single figure in a blue coat was walking away, their back turned to the viewer. Elian set his brush down. He reached up to his neck. The skin there was bare. He had sold the diamond collar to a fence 3 days after his escape. He hadn't gotten market value for it, it was too hot, but he had gotten enough. Enough for rent. Enough for canvas. Enough to buy a new phone with a number Silas Vane would never have. His phone buzzed on the stool. A text from Lucas, "Dinner tonight?" "My treat. I got a promotion." Elian smiled. It wasn't the polite, terrified smile he had worn in the penthouse. It was small, tired, and completely real. He typed back, "I'm in. But I'm picking the place. Somewhere loud." He stood up and stretched, his bones cracking. He looked around his tiny, cluttered apartment. There was no marble. No gold leaf. No security system promises him safety from the world. He walked to the window and pushed it open. The cold air rushed in, carrying the noise of traffic and people. It wasn't paradise. "It's mine," Elian whispered. He turned off the lights, grabbed his coat, and walked out the door, leaving it unlocked.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you for staying to the end. I want to use this opportunity to say Happy New Year. I hope that this new year brings the best out of you and everyone around you. I hope that you reach all your goals. I hope it was better than the last year. I wish that all your dreams come true. Please stick around for more. Subscribe if you haven't. Like, comment your thoughts down below because I always look forward to reading them. In the meantime, have fun and stay in the love.